Srijata, and I'm the co-founder of Foodwise. We have been running a special series of sessions this entire week for STHIRA, which is our Sustainable Food Innovation Challenge for university students in India. It is a collaboration between us at Foodwise and the University of Gastronomic Sciences of Pollenzo, Italy. The purpose of this innovation challenge is to engage young students in a learning and innovation experience to come up with ideas and solutions for the issues that affect the sustainability of food systems in the future. We have 6 themes for the challenge this year, and we have covered each of them in a session such as this one. Today, we have 2 speakers. Firstly, I would like to introduce Dr. Maddalena Borsato, who is a research associate in perception and quality at the University of Gastronomic Sciences. Her research interests encompass taste aesthetics and the philosophy of food, exploring the intersection of eating disorders and the relationship of cooking and pastry with art and design. And our second speaker today is Dr. Ganesh Bagla, who is professor at IIIT Delhi and also the director of the Complex Systems Lab. He is known for his work in computational gastronomy, applying data science to culinary systems and practices. Thank you both for being here, Maddalena and Dr. Bagla. Maddalena, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll share immediately my screen.
Yes, please.
So, yes, can you see it?
We can see it. We're good, Maddalena.
Okay, good. So before introducing today's topic, I'd like to say a few words about our university. So the University of Gastronomic Sciences in Pollenzo, in the middle of the countryside of Piedmont, north of Italy, celebrated last year its 20th anniversary. And our university is built on a highly interdisciplinary approach to food and gastronomy. And we can say that very proudly that we can proudly call ourselves the only university in the world devoted exclusively to the study of food, with a very international profile. All of our master's programs are taught entirely in English, and so a very complete curriculum that goes beyond theoretical lectures, which are of course the core, to include also educational field trips and some classes exploring the many roles and dimensions of food. So this is where I come from, and it's a very beautiful place. And now I can start. And I thank you for being here for this final webinar, which addresses a topic deeply connected, in my opinion, to all the others we have explored so far. And in a way, it's one that gathers them all together. I think it's something like this, speaking about human wisdom in relationship to food and health in our digital world. So before giving the floor to Dr. Bagler, which I'm really curious to hear, I'd like to briefly frame today's theme by highlighting, from my perspective, which is a philosophical one, some key concepts. To define the issue, I'd like to start from a 2-minute video taken from a 2008 movie that many of you probably know, and it's WALL-E. And this scene shows a vision of the future of humanity. I hope it must start without clicking, but let's see, yeah.
We can't hear the sound though, Maddalena. You may have to share.
You have to share the sound.
Yes, from your computer.
Where should I do? I don't know where it is. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry. Yes, here.
Okay.
I think, no, I cannot find it here. You know where is this that I can share the sound?
Under video
Sorry.
share sound from my computer. It should say something like that.
Yes, I did it. I think now it works. Sorry, I was sure I clicked it. Can you hear it now?
I don't know, something.
Wow.
Make a place scream.
No, it doesn't sound
Look, I'm tired of
So we'll
it.
take next week. Over and over.
If you can't fool the straws, the episode isn't any good.
What? Over here.
Whoa.
Tunnel!
Hello?
Tunnel! I'm in a tunnel, I can't hear you.
There you are.
By and large, everything you need to be happy. Your day is very important to us.
Hey, drink the bus. Here, take the cup. Hey, take the cup.
Please remain stationary. A service bot will be here to assist you momentarily.
Stewards? Hello?
Please remain stationary. A service bot will be here to assist you momentarily.
What's that? What's going on? John?
Eva?
No. John.
Eva?
Hi, Wally.
A is for Axiom, your home sweet home. B is for by and large, your very best friend.
Time for lunch. In a cup. Feel beautiful.
Stunning. Great. I know, honey. Men.
Attention, Axiom shoppers. Try blue. It's the new red.
Don't get me started.
Okay, I think we can stop here. You got the point. And unfortunately, of course, I don't have time to comment on the video in the detail, but even if it would be very interesting. But I wanted to use it to provoke some reflection around the central question we are asking us today, which is how can we use the tools of artificial intelligence and digital technology without losing our tangible, material, sensory, intuitive connection to food and health. So to reflect on the relationship with the digital world, we shouldn't be seen in negative terms at all. We need to approach it with attention, or better, with something we might call wisdom. That's why the title of this webinar. I'd like to bring out, as I said, 3 key concepts that might help us today, very briefly, which are embodied knowledge, mindful eating, and gustatory wisdom. So let's have a look at them very briefly before giving the stage to Dr. Bagler. So embodied knowledge refers to the understandings that comes from our lived experience, from our bodies interacting with the world. We often think of knowledge as something purely mental, but embodied knowledge challenges this by showing how our senses, perceptions, physical action play a crucial role in how we understand things. And this idea suggests that true knowledge is not just abstract or intellectual, it's also rooted in our physical experience. And one very powerful example is what I can call the intelligence of our hands. There is an Indian scholar. I put some references here in the corner, then I will share the slides with you, of course. This Indian scholar, Krina Patel, who graduated in the US, studied how bakers think only through their bodies. So a form of embodied thinking that shows how craft, especially in relation to food, reflects a deep bodily knowledge. And I think it's important to emphasize nowadays also the role of artisanship in the world of food. But we don't only have this kind of embodied knowledge when we cook or bake. We also have it when we eat, because we eat we are with our whole bodies and with all our senses. And this brings us to the second idea I want to just briefly mention, which is mindful eating. Let's start with a very simple question, like how often do we feel the need to how can I say, unplug from everything, to find peace, to reconnect with the world beyond our daily jobs and responsibilities. So very often we try to do this through the mean of food. And mindful eating, which comes from the broader practice of mindfulness, encourages awareness and listening to our needs when we eat. Even though it can be criticized in very different ways, it's because it's a partial understanding of a much broader relationship with food. I want to use mindful eating to highlight some points that we often take for granted. First is habit. Once we build a food habit or association, the actual taste or quality of food becomes less important. I made just one example. In a study by the University of Southern California, researchers gave people in a cinema freshly made popcorn and others popcorn that was a week old, almost rotten. Both groups ate everything, even the cold, stale popcorn, because of the habit of eating popcorn in the cinema. So very simple example to understand how habits are important when we are dealing with food. Another experiment comes from the book I mentioned, Always in the Corner, from a psychologist, Brian Watkins, that used bottomless soup bowls that they secretly refilled themselves with people while people were eating. And those eating from the self-refilling bowls consumed 73% more soup than those with normal bowls. So, and they didn't even notice it. So they still thought they ate a normal amount of soup. And this is another interesting example to show how much we rely on visual cues, on habits, instead of our body's real signals of hunger or fullness. The second is the role of the senses. We don't just eat with our mouths, we eat with all our senses, and all of them shape what and how we eat. There is a famous journalist, Michael Pollan, said that modern people often choose food based on nutrition labels, social norms, or price. These are all very important factors, of course, but this, according to him, leads to a loss of trust in our senses, in taste, in smell, even in touch, and in their role in our food choices. Third point of mindful eating, it's the help in noticing that there are different kinds of hunger. In our so-called digital age, visual hunger, the hunger of the eye, is the most common. We want what we constantly see advertised. Then there's connected to this a kind of mental mind hunger, which is shaped by our environment, by what society tells us is healthy or unhealthy, even if sometimes doesn't match what our bodies actually need. And there's also a heart hunger, an emotional one, the desire to feel cared for, often satisfied through what we call the comfort food. But the risk here is giving food the role of only of fulfilling needs that belong sometimes elsewhere. Finally, there's body hunger, the one we need to relearn how to listen to if we want to become truly wise in our relationship with food. And this brings us to the third and final concept of this very brief introduction, which is wisdom. What does it mean to be wise? Wisdom, it's a very important word, in my opinion. Doesn't mean pure intelligence or logical ability. It's not the same as being an expert in something. It can be all of these, but wisdom is an attitude, is a way of being. It's nice because in some languages, like Italian, for example, the word for wisdom, saggezza, comes from two different ideas. One is to have flavor, to taste, and the other one is to try, to test, to explore. This is why I call it, borrowing a term from Professor Nicola Perullo, which is mentioned always in this little corner, gustatory wisdom, so a form of wisdom through taste. Wisdom means knowing through feeling, being able to be flexible, to adapt and choose what is most appropriate in different situations. In relation to food, a wise person knows when to enjoy, when to reflect about what to choose, and even when to remain, for example, indifferent, depending on the moment and on the situation. And finally, and I will close it here, wise gustatory capacity helps us explore the connection between consumption and production. So it means understanding how the food we eat is connected to many things, including our health and the health of the planet. And so we return to our central question, now a little more developed, which leads us directly into today's presentation. And the question could be developed as well as how can we foster a wise connection between the digital world and these embodied sensory health-related dimensions of our relationship with food. So how can we become wise today? I thank you, and I leave the floor to Dr. Bagler, and thanks him too.
Yeah, I'm Ganesh Bagler. I am affiliated with IIIT Delhi, and for the last 10 years, I have been working in the space of computational gastronomy. And I'm very, very sure that many of you would not even have heard about it, given the fact that it's a relatively nascent niche that has been happening for a while now, for the last decade or so. My lab has been putting the foundations of this area. And at the offset, I would like to bring forth the fact that food is often seen as personal, subjective, and qualitative. And there is always an emotional aspect which is connected with food and cooking. And when we think about food through the lens of data, through the lens of digital approaches, then one might think as if we are losing sense of the sensory aspect, the touch, and the feel aspect of it. But the idea in computational gastronomy is not to lose track of those sensory elements, but rather to integrate those sensory elements in the most meaningful fashion in a framework such that it becomes computable. Now, as I go forward, I'll be repeating this phrase computability quite a few times. So, and therefore I'll be explaining what I mean by computability. But nonetheless, let me begin with the premise of how we can reclaim human wisdom to food and health in the digital age. I'll explain that to you in the next 20 to 25 minutes or so. AI is pervasive. It has been all around us. In addition to data-driven approaches, which we have been using for the last so many decades, pervasively in various facets of our life, right from logging into MacBook to tagging on Facebook. Everywhere we tend to use data-driven approaches, computational approaches, and specifically artificial intelligence. Now, the question is, if AI can be used for making recommendations on Netflix, can it be also used for making meaningful recommendations for recipes that you should be consuming, which are potentially tasty and healthy? Or in a similar manner, can it be used for other angles, other approaches by which food can become nutritious, healthy, as well as tasty? Those are the kind of questions we should be asking. And let me begin with a much broader premise, which is what AI tries to tackle. And that premise is that of artificial intelligence is primarily about capturing human intelligence, creativity, and expertise in a computational algorithm. And quite clearly, we have come a long way from trying to emulate our abilities of playing chess to all the way up to writing poetry, creating a painting, or for that matter, creating a musical piece. All of these, we have been doing it in bits and pieces over a period of time. Quite clearly, even in 1990s, nobody would have agreed that a computer can play a chess and can even beat a human grandmaster. But in 1998, it did happen, and Deep Blue IBM ended up beating Garry Kasparov, that we are all aware of. So something as deep and intellectually challenging as that of playing chess has been emulated by computer. But then, can it do the same in other creative endeavors, right from poetry, painting, and music? Looks like in the last at least 5 to 7 years, the new developments that have happened in the area of AI have been trying to do that. For example, if you can go to ChatGPT and write something like prompt it by saying that create a romantic poem about a beautiful evening in Paris, it will come up with one, incidentally, along with the rhythm, rhyme, and the meter that you might expect from a well-written poem. And of course, it will come up with many more versions of it if you prompt it properly. in a similar manner, we know that generative AI is making inroads into the space of visual abilities, that of painting, art, etc. And similarly, it is doing in the case of music, not so much as in the case of written and visual art, but similarly, it is happening in auditory art as well. Cooking is a much deeper paradigm because it involves not only the visual and tactile aspects, but it also involves the gustatory, olfactory aspects, which are far, far complex and deep for a computer to capture. Therefore, to think that a computer will be able to capture human intuition and expertise that is present in a chef or anyone who knows cooking well would be a far stretch, one might think so. But that is the paradigm we have been dealing with in computational gastronomy. We believe that various facets of food and cooking can be captured in a data-driven fashion and thereby come up with a computational approach, an AI-driven approach, which can enable us in enhancing our realm of cooking and anything that has to do with eating in a far bigger manner than what we can do today with only human intuition and expertise. That's the premise that I'm pushing, and I know that some of you might want to agree with it, some of you may have disagreement with it. Nonetheless, this is the science, this is the new technology which is happening in my lab, and now world over various other laboratories have taken up, and that's what I would like to explain. So when I look at food in my lab through the lens of data, we see recipes as cultural capsules which have been carried on, passed on from generation to generation, such that raw ingredients can be brought together, processed, and a delicious dish can be made out of it. Now, this knowledge, can it be captured, is the question in a data-driven fashion, is what we have been asking. There are at least three big reasons why I believe in 21st century we should not be leaving alone this opportunity of converting food and cooking into a data-driven science. One of them all of us are aware of, which is that food and cooking are central to the human identity. It actually defines what we are, deeply defines what we are as a Homo sapien, and has been responsible for increase in the brain sizes that we have, disproportionately large brain sizes that we tend to have. In fact, this is an argument which has been made by Richard Wrangham in his book Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human. It essentially says that the act of cooking is something which enabled human beings, Homo sapiens, to get their time off from foraging and eating raw food. In fact, cooking was the act by which we were digesting our food outside stomach. So that was a big way we were relieved of a huge amount of time, thereby providing us enough evolutionary advantage to get disproportionately large brain sizes. The second reason why in 21st century we are doomed if we do not look at food as a digital object is because of its health consequences. And today, lifestyle disorders, obesity, cardiovascular disorders, and diabetes are time bombs, and looks like probably one of the ways by which we can possibly try solving this problem is to look at them through the lens of data. And lastly, there is an existential problem that is facing us as a humanity. We need to feed 10 billion people by the time we reach 2050, which is the population we anticipate to have by that time. And we need to find sustainable ways of feeding this population, without which we might have to find ways of going to Mars, which is what Elon Musk is trying to do. Having said that, these are the three arguments about why we need to look at food in the deepest manner possible. Let me bring out the premise of how technology, how data, how artificial intelligence can play a big role in converting food and every facet of food, including cooking, into a data-driven, AI-driven science. Computational gastronomy captures every factor associated with food in terms of data and computing. Now, when I say that, let me give a couple of examples that are concretely available to us, which have changed our life dramatically. One is Google Maps. Every one of us is aware of how physical maps were the dominating way by which we would move from point A to point B. But then turns out that availability or collection of large amount of data on the geo coordinates, and second, application of computational algorithms, the so-called shortest path algorithms and similar, has enabled us today to have a tool called Google Maps or equivalents of that, but predominantly Google Maps. And that makes our life extremely easy. Not only that, it also enables us to build up applications on top of Google Map, including those of the Olas and Ubers and other, which use navigation from point A to point B in the most efficient fashion via Google Maps, are dependent on it. So that's a classic example of creating a domain of life, converting a domain of life into a computable domain. And there are many, many other domains of life which have become computable and have thereby changed dramatically. I know when we talk about food and cooking and converting into a computable domain, that might seem like a far stretch, given the emotional value that we attach with it, the subtleties and nuances that go into cooking. But my premise, my argument, my wager is that indeed it is possible to convert food and cooking into a data-driven domain as such. When we talk about food, there are multiple facets to it. I consider food, there are jigsaw pieces of food puzzles, and many of them, they exist, out of which I am showing you 5 of them. One is the traditional recipes, which is what we use for cooking our food on a day-to-day basis. The source of flavor, the taste and odor of ingredients and the dishes, the nutritional correlates, the macros and the micros, health associations, and finally, the kind of carbon footprint that the dishes leave on the earth, by virtue of carbon dioxide that is released by way of right from farm to fork, a given dish is made. So what we have been able to do is to compile large amount of data on these facets in the last 10 years. And when we started this work, almost no data was available in a structured fashion, which can be used for computability, for building algorithms on top of it. In fact, when we started, we had only a couple of hundreds or thousands of recipes which were available in a structured fashion. What we have done is to build on it and create one of the most comprehensive data repositories. Because in computer science, there is an adage which says garbage in, garbage out. You cannot come up with meaningful inferences, cannot build models that are predictive without having structured, quality, curated data. And that's where we have today RecipeDB, which has got more than 118,000 recipes. But very soon we are reaching a mark of 500,000 recipes, which are structured along with all of their attributes and metadata. The cuisine that it belongs to, the category that it has label, it has got the ingredients, quantity, unit, temperature, utensil, processing, which is cooking protocol, which has been used for it, etc. Everything has been nicely labeled and segregated, thereby making recipes computable. Exactly in a similar manner, we have the data of flavors, health associations, and carbon footprints, not to mention the nutritional value. All of these we have built meticulously over a period of time, and we believe this lay a solid foundation for computational gastronomy and achieving the vision of making food computable. And I'm very, very happy and proud to be saying that this work has taken us a lot of time and effort. There have been a lot of obstacles on the way to reaching and achieving this. However, our lab has become today known as the ground zero of computational gastronomy globally. And having done it sitting in India, especially makes me so happy and proud about it. Now that the world is looking at it and across the globe. In fact, this year we have 3 different workshops happening. One in Italy, in fact, in Parma in the month of September, followed by the one in Ireland, in Dublin, and then in Washington, DC. So this vision of making food computable is something that I have been propagating for a while. While there are challenges, while there are skeptical voices which say that certain aspects of it cannot be done so, but we believe that in principle, majority of what we consider to be structured part of cooking can be made data-driven and automated or computational. And this has been something which has gaining traction over a period of time in academia, media, as well as industry, and has achieved a lot of visibility over a period of time, right from the west to the east in various parts of the world. Let me give one concrete example towards moving on the changing the gears. Let me tell you one concrete example of how AI can dramatically change how we look at food and recipes. If I were to ask you a question about how many recipes that are there, globally speaking, if I were to compile traditional recipes, then turns out that the number that you can imagine are not more than to the tune of a few hundred thousand, tens of thousands, or similar kind of a numbers that I end up getting if you ask a lay user, lay reader, student of gastronomy for that matter, because many of the recipes are repeated over a period of time, and therefore we do not have too many unique recipes per se. But then, even if I were to compile all of them together, which are documented, turns out that the number doesn't go beyond a few millions. It's of the order of a few millions, the number of recipes that are documented. But then the number of recipes that can in principle be made by combining in a creative fashion ingredients and processing them in a manner that has never been done by any culture, turns out that that number of recipes is humongously large. It's the number which is more than the estimated number of the stars that are there in the whole universe. It's a humongously large number. I know, especially gastronomists among you and skeptics who are very thoughtful about it, would be thinking that don't tell me this is true, that you can randomly combine ingredients and process them and thereby get a palatable or a tasty recipe. I agree. That is not true. That is where intuition of a chef, anyone who knows how to cook well, their training and expertise comes into the play. And this is where we have asked a question: can a machine think like a chef? In fact, this is an extension of a question that was asked by none other than Alan Turing, one of the founding fathers of computer science and AI. He, in 1955, wrote a thoughtful article called Can a Machine Think? We have extended that argument to make it narrow and domain specific by asking, can a machine think like a chef? Essentially, we are asking, can a computer capture intelligence, expertise, and intuition of a chef in a program? I know it is challenging given the fact that human beings are driven by evolutionarily endowed senses, the taste and odor and the tactile senses, etc. And that, getting over that or capturing all of that through a computational algorithm seems rather difficult. But I would like to draw your attention towards some of the creative endeavors that have already been captured by AI, and to say that in a big way it is possible, if not all, but at least majority of culinary creativity can be captured by AI is a possibility, is what I would like to propose. And this is where we have come up with an algorithm which has been trained using a large number of traditional recipes which are structured, and we have fondly named it Ratatouille. And I'm sure many of you would have seen this movie Ratatouille, where Remy the adventurous rat would like to learn cooking and would like to move into the world of culinary creativity, of human culinary creativity, and would like to become a chef for that matter. And this is an algorithm which is deeply rooted in cultural knowledge base that has been gathered via over 118,000 recipes, label them meticulously to identify what part of it is ingredient, where is quantity, which is unit, how much, what kind of flavor molecules are present in each ingredient, etc. All of that has been captured, and thereby this algorithm comes up with novel recipes that no culture has ever seen so far. And idea here is that let's see how can we come up with those astronomically large number of recipes. That's what we are trying to do using Ratatouille. You can play with it. This is a old version on this URL. It is available. It's an older version. Nonetheless, the new versions are available, and we should be able to use them very soon. Now, I know again the skeptic in you would be saying that it's one thing to use a large language model such as ChatGPT and create a poetry which I can read and appreciate for its rhythm, rhyme, and meter. But then when it comes to recipe, you just can't come up with a text of the recipe and call it a done job. You would like to cook it because the proof is in the pudding. You need to cook it, taste it, and evaluate it by virtue of its taste and odor and aroma. And this is where we have taken a step forward of actually cooking the recipes. But before that, we have created a test called the Turing test for chef. The idea is very simple, again, borrowed from Alan Turing the Great, wherein the essential thought is that we have a bunch of real recipes which are shown in the green color here, the stack of real recipes, which is again around 118,000 recipes. And we have a bunch of AI generated, ratatouille generated recipes, which are shown in red. And there is an interface, and this is only by invitation to some chefs. The idea here is that one of the recipe will be shown randomly between the real and fake to a chef, and they are supposed to read it and give their judgment based on their intuition, expertise, whether it is real or fake on a scale of 0 to 1, 0 being fake and 5 being real. How do they judge this to be how real it is or how fake it is? And the idea here is that if we are able to fool a chef into thinking that a computer generated, AI generated recipe is real, then we have partly won the battle. Of course, eventually we need to cook them and to validate them, taste them before we can claim that AI has arrived. But we have achieved so far in Turing test a performance, what is called as an accuracy of around 70%. So many recipes where successfully we're able to fool a chef into thinking that they are real incidentally. So, well, this is one of the steps that we have taken in the domain of computational gastronomy, where we believe AI data-driven approaches can help us encode facets of food and cooking in the most nuanced fashion, in the capturing one of the most subtle aspect of food and cooking that goes into it, as well as come up with something new, use generative approaches to come up with something new. And this is where I believe there is a huge potential for AI to transform our food, because AI can not only generate recipes, but it can generate recipes which are of different requirement. It can make recipes suiting to the cost, calorie, carbon footprint, allergy, health conditions, and you can imagine whatnot. So AI-driven dietary interventions, when it comes to the health angle of it, is one of the major directions where we can move into and make food personalized. Because what I should be eating if I were to have diabetes vis-a-vis what you should be eating can be very different. And it has been agreed from a medical point of view that it has to be different. In such a case, how can one come up with a dietary intervention which is both helpful given my health condition as well as personalized for my requirement and taste and likings, is something that can be done with the help of AI, is what I strongly believe. Exactly in a similar manner, dietary logging and managing diet on a day-to-day basis can be done. So this is an app actually which we have built, where you have to take a picture of your platter and it will keep a track of how many calories you have consumed on based on your daily recommended allowance, and can give you nudges in terms of how much more or should you be eating, or how much you should be controlling your eating because you have reached your recommended daily allowance incidentally. So towards the end, I strongly believe that beyond capturing culinary creativity, coming up with health dietary interventions which are targeted towards health conditions, making food personalized, AI can also help in reaching some of these sustainable development goals, thereby feeding 10 billion people in a manner that is not only sustainable but tasty and delicious. That's what I strongly believe so. And all of this adventure that I am living, notice that this journey has not been easy. When we started this work, people laughed at us, thinking that, come on, how can you think of food as a as a digital object? How can you convert it into bits and bytes, literally speaking? How can you do that? How can you possibly think of designing a new recipe when I propose this idea? But over time, it has become an established area. And this has been an adventurous journey for me, which is being written as a book tentatively called Digitally Delicious, and hopefully should be out by the end of this year. I would like, as usual, to stop at this quote by none other than Brilla Savrine. 200 years back, Brilla Savrine wrote the book Physiology of Taste, in which he introduced the term gastronomy. It has taken us around 200 years to reach from gastronomy to computational gastronomy in 21st century, where IT, computer science, AI are the buzzwords. But I still believe what Brilla Savrine said then, which is that of the discovery of a new dish confers more happiness on humanity than the discovery of a new star. Incidentally, as a teenager, I aspired to be an astronomer. So I could not discover new dishes by becoming an astronomer, but I hope to discover new dishes by becoming a gastronomer to make humanity happier and healthier. So I would like to stop there and take any questions that you may have. Thank you.